Okay, so in your Delta Math practice, you had a section that was called Compare Function Values. And in this section, it gave you something that, well, you actually don't know, but it's called a polynomial, and something that was exponential, and you were asked to compare them at a certain value of x. This is using function notation to evaluate. So it's actually the same thing that we're talking about in this particular lesson. So let's try this out. So for the first one, if I want to find f of 6, everything else is going to stay the same. It's just where I saw x, I'm going to leave an open parentheses and get ready to plug in the value they want me to evaluate, which is 6. Now, what can get you guys very easily here is not watching out for order of operations. So PEMDAS, our favorite, tells us the order more or less, right? So these kind of are interchangeable here. But we need to do parentheses actually means like if you had an expression like if you had like x plus 6 in parentheses, you'd have to evaluate that first. It doesn't mean parentheses as in when we use it to represent multiplication. So this is something that I see a lot of students do. Well, they're like, Miss Wright, parentheses means first. But that's actually multiplication, just using parentheses to express it, which of course is nice and confusing. So what we're actually going to do first here is exponents, and we're going to evaluate 6 to the 4, which I actually don't know what that is, because that would be 6 times 6 times 6 times 6, and I'm going to use a calculator. And it turns out it's a very large number, 1,296. And that's what we're going to multiply by 2. Again, I'm just going to use a calculator for that. And I get 2,592. Now, that was for f of x. We have a second function to compare it to, which is named g of x. Remember, the letters f and g are just names. They're there to help clarify which is which. So if I want to find g of 6, everything about this function is going to stay the same. I'm just opening up a spot for me to actually plug in a 6 and evaluate. Again, using order of operations. So here, exponents takes place first. So yes, I'm going to use my calculator again. And we get 729. And when we multiply that times 3, we get 2,189. So what they want you to do is compare this number to this number. Which one's bigger, smaller, or are they the same? And in this case, it seems that this one is actually going to be larger than this value. So we would say that's f of, not 2, 6, and g of 6. So we would say f of 6 is greater than g of 6, which means we would want this answer here. So that's what you're really doing, is you're evaluating using function notation.